code. Yes. This numbering system? Right. Why don't you just give me the numbering system of all of those that are legally liable for the enforcement of the laws? And then get me the telephone numbers of the numbering system, the German numbering system? Now, I'm a little confused. No, I'm not. I'm a little concerned. Yes, yes. A lot of you that are in office, you got there because of phone calls? Yes. And knowing what I know about the telephone system of the United States, I'm going to want Eunice's phone number. Yes. And then I'm going to want Clara's phone number. Yes. And then there's that biological grandfather that you didn't want me to know about. Give me that fuck's phone number right now. Now, I know at the time of their death they must have had a phone number. Poop. So just go through the Social Security index, right, and then find out what their phone number was. Yes. And see if somebody in the government just had to listen in on what they were saying. Now, as I remember, my grandmother did quite often mention that she had spoke to Edward Budnick, and there's that elder abuse of putting my grandmother in a nursing home, her death in 2017. Why don't you give me her phone number and find out if anybody in government, yes, did actually listen in and had to be on her while she was on the phone. Now, when I was at my grandmother's house, I answered the phone anytime it rang. And I'd say, yes, she's here. No, she's not. And then, oop, 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 oop. I want the fucking lexicon and I want the telephone number system. Oh, good for you. Good for you. Now, let's see. Let's the cost to abide event. Yes, 1858. The cost incurred by a successful party who is entitled to an award of those costs incurred at the conclusion of the matter, especially appellate court's order for payment of costs to the party who finally prevails in a proceeding that has been returned to a lower court. Yes. Now there's legal costs, attorney fees, and other expenditures related to a lawsuit. And then there's a taxable cost, a litigation related expense that the prevailing party is entitled to as a part of the court's award. Now, let's say I could admit as evidence an actual quote of the prosecuting attorney, and I can prove that for 3 years and 3 months you've intentionally caused me an immense amount of fucking damage. And every time I told you it was against the law, you were actually working for somebody other than yourselves. Now, I'm thinking that I'm going to want these awards for these costs. Yes, because I'm wanting to. You know, I'm having to stay at a location that I happen to like. Yes. But the problem is, it's not big enough for myself and my 5 sons. Yes. And for every individual in government that said, well, he doesn't have a job, so he can't support his kids. I think that there are some real lawsuits here. I mean, some big ones. Yes. Now, for all of you that have been tapping the phones of any and all individuals without a warrant, violating their privacy. Yes. For every government employee, I'm going to find out who you are. You're going to get sued. Homeland Security, how are you? Now, for every employee, you know, it's nice that you work in the government. Yes. But the truth of the matter is, I'm owed, ODE, as in OWED. Yes. An immense amount of inheritance. Yes. And every day I told you it was against the law to keep me from my sons, and you idiots decided to put in the newspaper it was an obligation to exculpatory evidence. Yes. Now, for all of those that understand Brady versus Maryland, I can actually sue every. You're going to. Let's look at the charges or fees taxed by the court, such as filing fees. Yes. Jury fees, courthouse fees, court reporter fees, also termed court costs. Why don't you give me all the costs of every employee of every court in the United States that happens to be alive or recently retired in the last 30, those that are still alive? I'd like to know the employees of every court of the United States that charges any fees for the use of the actual court. Yeah. And then I like the lexicon. Yes. And then I like the phone numbers. Yes. Of your actual relatives that had to be on you while you were at work. Now, let's say the court clerk, right, decided that I would go to court and I would motion the court to have you remove the protection order, completely ignoring the forgery. Yes. Completely ignoring the exculpatory evidence. Yes. Completely ignoring what the prosecuting attorney said and then I would like to have the personal telephone numbers of every employee of every court of the United States. And then I'd like to know your ancestors and I'd like to have their phone numbers because the truth of the matter is your relatives have been being on you while you were employed in a court that charges fees. There's certain jury fees, yes, certain courthouse fees, yes. Now, for every court of the United States that has charged any fee for the use of the actual court itself, I'm going to sue every fucking court in the United States of America because he's